Yeah.
With your racing background and everything, like you're
Yeah.
not a free ride guy.
Well, you know what? It's like if you force me to pick one sled, and it's really tough. I mean, we're pretty spoiled because we have all of them in the shop. But I think that the best way that I would explain it is, man, for the Summit, like in the X package, is really it's the lightest feeling one, takes the least amount of energy, it's the most agile. It really, at the end of the day, that takes the least amount of energy, and I like it in a longer configuration. If I had to pick one Summit X to pick, I would ride it in a 65 or a 75. But since we don't have 75s this year, I guess I'm riding a 65.
So are you doing a 65 because of the snow depth? Or
I just
the way the
like
chassis?
I like the balance between the traction of how much track I have, the T-Motion, and the big footprint. To think of that as like riding an enduro bike with soft rear tire, bib moose. This thing sticks to the ground, gets wicked traction. And if you're going to ride fast, and I had to ride an expert, I would ride it in a 54 because it's more like motocross, or where you're just carrying momentum, wheeling through everything, and it's about just speed, like ripping it. And that's kind of the difference. If I was going to go ride in the trees, I really like the X because every time you go through it and you think, oh, that's my route A, nope, option B, nope, option C, and this thing's agile enough to catch whatever option, right? Whereas the expert, you set it on the path and it's going to go on that path, so you better carry momentum to go through it. And that's kind of how I would differentiate those. And in a 165, in an expert, I think you got to be taller, like over 6 feet and over 200 pounds. That is a great sled for you. And if you're 6'3" and 240 pounds, then a Summit X is probably going to be like riding something that's a little bit not too agile, but it's very extremely responsive for somebody like that, and it doesn't have, you lose in stability where you gain that in an expert with no T-Motion, no flex edge track. So that's kind of the,
Yeah, that's one of the things we find on the X is we tend to override it.
Yeah.
Because a little bit of input goes a long way on the X.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it doesn't have a
It's
stopping
like-
point. It'll just kind of
And
come all
once
the way
you
down.
have a very light touch, and it's something for smaller people, or over the years, I just want to put in less energy, and that's where the X shines. And you can make it do everything, and it really does take less energy, but it's maybe more deliberate touch, where it's not strength, it's just very deliberate, small increment touches that'll make that thing respond. Whereas, if you're just grip it and rip it and run and gunning, like that's where the expert shines. Is, or if you're coming off a brand that has a vertical steering post, that's where I would go first, is the expert. Like, it's kind of that's what I think anyways, right or wrong.
Do you spend any time on the free ride though?
I do, and honestly, like if it was spring conditions, like I would just ride the free ride because it's got wicked suspension and 15-inch track, so you don't really have to worry about sinking in. And like for our snowpack anyways, and you could just carry tons of momentum, and like the suspension capacity is awesome on it because it's kind of half snowcross inspired or race sled inspired.
So you probably spent a lot of time on the prototype free ride with the rack steering system.
Yeah.
Talk about how that feels, the idea behind it, and then do you feel like it feels totally different than just a single pivot arm steering system?
You'll feel the difference for sure, and even like side hilling for sure in the rough rutted stuff, it actually will give you less feedback in the steering or in the handlebars, and it's really a light feel in it. But if you're lifting it, and like day in, day out, or you're going to ride 5 days in a row, 10 days in a row, then I prefer the X just because of lightweight, just ruthlessly light, and so I don't know, it's really hard to pick one.
Yeah, well, like I say, if we could all be in a shop where we had one of everything, we could kind of go out and have a lot of fun.
But and that's why I think it's important for people to look at and honestly look at what is going to suit them the best. Like, there's no right or wrong answer. If you're going to ride more trail, or if you want to just do jumps and flips and stuff like that, maybe the free ride's the one, because you can pound the snot out of it. It's got wider ski stance and it's meant to carry speed like narrow track, so it's got lots of track speed. It does that, and whereas a 16-inch wide track makes a difference when it's waist deep powder. Like, it's a no-brainer for the wider track, right? But if the snow is more firm, then Freeride's a good choice too.
So what do you feel when you get into the spring conditions on the X with the flex suspension and the flex edge track?
And
start to lose an edge?
there's where if it did have a chink in the armor, that would be where it showed up. But for me, I would rather take the wicked POW days and all that and have a great preseason or throughout the season, and then spring riding is just spring riding.
Yeah.
But if you have more spring or maritime conditions, then I would just ride the Freeride. If you're not getting wicked POW days for days and days on end,